Outside a dimly lit roadhouse bar in northern Montana, an elderly man collapsed onto the gravel parking lot, clutching a faded photograph and gasping for breath. His weathered hands trembled as he begged passing strangers for help, not for himself, but for someone he'd lost decades ago. Most people walked past, eyes averted, dismissing him as another forgotten soul, drowning in regret and whiskey. But one man stopped. His name was Cole Brennan, a former Marine turned long-haul biker, whose leather vest bore the patch of the Iron Vow Brotherhood, a nationwide motorcycle club built on one sacred principle: a promise made is a debt owed, no matter how many years have passed. When Cole knelt beside the old man and heard his story, a tale of a promise broken 43 years ago, a daughter he abandoned, and a final chance to make things right before his heart gave out, something ancient stirred in his chest. That night, Cole made a single phone call. By dawn, the rumble of 500 motorcycles echoed across 3 state lines, converging on a small town that had long forgotten the name Walter Hayes. What followed was not a rescue, it was a reckoning, a journey through buried shame, institutional corruption, and the kind of loyalty that refuses to let a man die with his promise unfulfilled. Because in the Iron Vow Brotherhood, redemption isn't given, it's ridden for, mile by mile, until the debt is paid in full. This is the story of how 500 bikers turned one old man's final hours into a legacy that shook an entire community and reminded the world that honor never expires. The gravel crunched under boots and tires as the Friday night crowd filtered into Lucky's Roadhouse, a weathered bar that sat like a scar on the edge of Highway 93 in northern Montana. The neon sign above the entrance flickered, half the letters dead, the other half bleeding red into the October darkness. Inside, classic rock poured through cracked speakers, and the smell of fried food mixed with cigarette smoke and spilled beer. Outside, the parking lot was a patchwork of pickup trucks, sedans with rusted undercarriages, and a few motorcycles parked near the entrance. The air was cold, sharp enough to sting the lungs, and the wind carried the scent of pine trees from the surrounding forest. No one noticed the old man at first. He stood near the edge of the lot, leaning heavily against a wooden post that held up a broken awning. His flannel shirt was too thin for the weather, and his jeans hung loose on a frame that had withered over the years. His face was a road map of deep lines, sun damage, and sleepless nights. His hands shook, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something that had been eating at him for decades. In his right hand, he clutched a photograph. The edges were worn soft. The image faded from years of being folded and unfolded. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She stood in front of a tire swing, one hand gripping the rope, her face lit with pure joy. Walter Hayes stared at that photograph like it was the last piece of oxygen in a drowning man's lungs. He had driven 3 hours to get here, following a lead he'd found in an old phone book at the public library. Someone had told him that a man named Brennan, a biker who ran with a crew that helped people find what they'd lost, came through Lucky's every few weeks. Walter didn't know if it was true. He didn't know if the man would even listen, but he was out of time. His doctor had given him 6 months, maybe less. His heart was failing, the muscle worn down by decades of guilt, cheap liquor, and the weight of a promise he'd never kept. He had no money, no family, no one who would claim his body when it finally gave out. All he had was that photograph and a name he hadn't spoken aloud in 43 years. Emma, if you're watching this, take a moment to share where you're from in the comments. We love hearing from viewers around the world. Walter took a step forward, intending to go inside and ask if anyone knew Brennan. His vision blurred. His chest tightened like a fist closing around his ribs. He gasped, one hand reaching out for balance, but there was nothing to grab. He fell. The gravel bit into his palms and knees. The photograph slipped from his fingers and landed face up in a puddle of oil and rainwater. Walter tried to call out, but his voice came out as a rasp, barely audible over the music and laughter spilling from the bar. A couple walked past him. They glanced down, saw the old man on the ground, and kept walking. A truck pulled out of the lot, headlights sweeping over Walter's crumpled form. The driver didn't stop. Walter's breath came in shallow bursts. His vision tunneled. He thought about Emma, wondered if she was still alive, if she'd ever forgiven him, if she even remembered his face. Then he heard it, the deep, guttural rumble of a motorcycle engine. Headlights cut through the darkness, and a lone bike rolled into the lot, a custom-built Harley with matte black paint and chrome pipes that gleamed under the neon glow. The rider killed the engine and dismounted in one smooth motion. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a greying beard and hands scarred from years of mechanical work and hard living. His leather vest was covered in patches, military insignias, names of fallen brothers, and one large emblem on the back. A steel chain formed into a circle, with the words "Iron Vow Brotherhood" stitched above it. His name was Cole Brennan. He saw the old man on the ground and crossed the lot in 4 long strides. "Hey, hey, old-timer, you with me?" Cole dropped to one knee, his hand on Walter's shoulder. His voice was rough but steady, the kind of voice that had talked men down from ledges and dragged friends out of burning buildings. Walter's eyes fluttered open. He tried to speak, but his throat wouldn't cooperate. Cole looked around the parking lot, his jaw tightening when he realized no one else had stopped. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his other hand checking Walter's pulse. "Stay with me," Cole said. "Ambulance is on the way." Walter's hand shot out and grabbed Cole's wrist. His grip was weak, trembling but desperate. "Not hospital," Walter gasped. "Please, not enough time." Cole frowned. "You need medical attention." "Need to find her." Walter's voice cracked. His eyes locked onto Cole's, wide and pleading. "My daughter, Emma. I left her 43 years ago. I promised I'd come back." Cole went still. Walter's hand fumbled toward the photograph lying in the puddle. Cole picked it up, wiping the oil off with his thumb. He stared at the image of the little girl, then back at the broken man in front of him. "I'm dying," Walter whispered. "Heart's done, but I need to find her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I never stopped." His voice failed. Tears streaked down his weathered face, cutting clean lines through the dirt and exhaustion. Cole Brennan had seen a lot of broken men in his life. He'd been one himself once, back when he came home from Afghanistan with ghosts in his head and blood on his hands. He knew what it looked like when a man was staring into the void, begging for one last chance to make something right. He looked at the photograph again, at the little girl's smile, at the weight of 43 years in an old man's trembling hands. Then he made a decision. "What's her name?" Cole asked quietly. "Full name." "Emma. Emma Hayes. Born in Billings. I left when she was 7. Her mother took her away. I never—" Walter's breath hitched. His eyes closed. Cole pulled out his phone again, not to call 911, but to dial a different number. A number that only a few dozen people in the country had access to. It rang twice. "Brennan," a gravelly voice answered. "What's the situation?" Cole looked down at Walter, then at the photograph still clutched in his hand. "I need the Brotherhood," Cole said. "All of them. We've got a promise to keep." Cole stayed with Walter until the ambulance arrived. The paramedics worked quickly, checking vitals, hooking up an oxygen mask, loading the old man onto a stretcher. Walter's eyes never left Cole's face, and his hand remained locked around Cole's wrist until the very last second, as if letting go would mean surrendering to the void. "I'll find her," Cole said, his voice low and steady. "You hear me, Walter? I'll find Emma." Walter's lips moved behind the oxygen mask, forming words Cole couldn't hear, but he didn't need to. The gratitude in the old man's eyes said everything. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the vehicle pulled out of the lot, sirens wailing into the night. Cole stood alone in the parking lot, the photograph of Emma still in his hand. The wind picked up. carrying the smell of diesel and pine, and for a moment he just stood there staring at the image of a little girl who had no idea her father had spent 4 decades searching for the courage to come back. Cole pocketed the photograph and walked back to his bike. He sat down on the worn leather seat, pulled out his phone, and opened the encrypted messaging app that the Iron Vow Brotherhood used for operations. The group was named The Chain. It had 487 active members spread across 14 states, bikers, veterans, mechanics, truckers, and blue-collar workers who had sworn an oath to uphold one sacred principle: a promise made is a debt owed, and no brother rides alone when that debt comes due. Cole typed a single message. Code vow, Montana, old man dying, needs to find his daughter before his heart gives out. Left her 43 years ago in Billings. Name, Emma Hayes. I'm writing this one to the end. Who's in? He hit send and set the phone on the handlebar. Then he waited. 5 seconds passed. The phone buzzed. Casper, Wyoming. I'm in. Rolling out in 20. Rider call sign, Ironside. Another buzz. Boise, Idaho. Count me in. ETA 6 hours. Rider call sign, Hammer. The messages started flooding in. Spokane, on my way. Missoula, already gearing up. Great Falls, my crew's ready. We ride at dawn. Billings, chapter, standing by. We'll start the search local. Within 10 minutes, 94 riders had confirmed. Within 30 minutes, the count hit 237. By the time Cole started his bike and pulled out of Lucky's parking lot, the number had climbed past 400. The Iron Vow Brotherhood was mobilizing. Cole rode through the night heading east on Highway 93 toward the small town of Whitefish, where the Brotherhood's regional chapter kept a safe house. The road was empty, the only light coming from his headlamp cutting through the darkness. The cold air bit at his face, but he didn't mind. The rumble of the engine, the vibration of the road beneath him, it cleared his head, sharpened his focus. He thought about Walter, about the desperation in the old man's voice, about the photograph of a 7-year-old girl who was now 50 years old, somewhere out there, living a life that had moved on without her father. Cole had seen this story before. Hell, he'd lived parts of it himself. He knew what it was like to carry ghosts, to wake up at 2 a.m. drenched in sweat, haunted by the faces of people you'd failed, to live with the weight of promises you couldn't keep because the world had broken you first. But he also knew something else. It was never too late to honor a vow, even if the man who made it was dying, even if the person on the other end didn't want to be found. The act of trying, the refusal to let the promise die, that was what mattered. That was what the Brotherhood stood for. Cole pulled into the safe house just after midnight. It was a converted garage on the edge of town, with a long driveway and enough space to park 20 bikes. Inside, the place smelled like motor oil and coffee. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered in maps, laptops, and stacks of old phone books. 3 men were already there, waiting. The first was Marcus Ironside Cole, a former Army Ranger with a prosthetic leg and a mind like a steel trap. He specialized in logistics and coordinating large-scale operations. The second was Danny Wrench Kavanagh, a mechanic and tech specialist who could hack into databases and track down information most people didn't even know existed. The third was Victor St. Morales, a former chaplain who now rode with the Brotherhood, offering counsel and keeping the group grounded when emotions ran high. "All right," Ironside said, spreading a map of Montana across the table. "Let's hear it." Cole pulled out the photograph and set it down in the center of the map. Walter Hayes, 71 years old, heart failure, 6 months to live, maybe less. Left his daughter Emma in Billings 43 years ago when she was 7. No contact since. He wants to find her before he dies, wants to tell her he's sorry. Wrench leaned forward, studying the photograph. Emma Hayes, born in Billings. That gives us a starting point. I can pull birth records, cross-reference with census data, social media. If she's still alive, I'll find her. What if she doesn't want to be found? Saint asked quietly. What if she's spent 43 years trying to forget him? Cole nodded slowly. Then we give her the choice. We find her, we tell her the situation, and we let her decide. But Walter gets his shot. He gets to say what he needs to say. That's the promise. It's late here in Montana, but somewhere out there, you're watching this story unfold. Drop a comment and let us know what time it is, where you are. Ironside tapped the map. We've got 412 riders confirmed and counting. I say we split into search teams. Billings chapter takes the local angle, hospitals, schools, old addresses. We send teams to surrounding towns in case she moved. Wrench runs the digital side. The rest of us keep the pressure on until we find her. What about Walter? Saint asked. He's stable for now, Cole said. But the clock's ticking. We've got days, not weeks. Wrench was already typing on his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Give me 2 hours. I'll have a list of every Emma Hayes in Montana between the ages of 48 and 52. Cole looked around the table at the 3 men, brothers he'd ridden with through hell and back. Men who understood that some debts couldn't be paid in cash or blood. They had to be paid in miles, in sweat, in the refusal to quit when the world told you it was too late. We ride at dawn, Cole said, and we don't stop until we bring Emma home. The men nodded. Outside, the sound of engines began to fill the night. One by one, motorcycles rolled into the driveway, headlights cutting through the darkness, riders dismounting and shaking hands, the air thick with exhaust and brotherhood. By the time the sun rose over the Montana mountains, 500 bikers stood ready, and the search for Emma Hayes had begun. The dawn light broke cold and pale over Whitefish, Montana, painting the mountains in shades of steel and smoke. The safe house parking lot was packed with motorcycles, rows of chrome and leather, flags bearing the Iron Vow emblem, and riders standing in tight clusters, drinking coffee from thermoses and going over maps. Cole Brennan stood on the porch, looking out at the assembled crowd. 500 riders, men and women who had dropped everything, jobs, plans, responsibilities, because one old man had collapsed outside a bar and begged for help. Because a promise made 43 years ago still mattered. Ironside climbed onto the bed of a pickup truck parked near the entrance, holding a megaphone. His voice cut through the morning air. "Listen up!" Ironside's voice boomed across the lot. "We've got a mission. Walter Hayes is dying. He's got days, maybe a week if we're lucky. 43 years ago, he walked out on his daughter Emma. He was young, broken, and made the worst mistake of his life. Now he's old, dying, and wants one chance to make it right. Our job is to find Emma Hayes and give him that chance." He pointed to a blown-up image of the photograph taped to the side of the truck, the little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. "That's Emma at 7 years old. She's 50 now. Last known location, Billings, Montana. Wrench has pulled records. We've got 23 women named Emma Hayes in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming who fit the age range. We're splitting into teams. Each team gets a list of names and locations. You knock on doors. You ask questions. You find her." A rider near the front raised his hand. "What if she doesn't want anything to do with him?" "Then we respect that," Ironside said firmly. "But she deserves to know he's looking. She deserves to make the choice. We don't force anything. We just deliver the message and let her decide." Another rider called out. "What about Walter? Where is he now?" "He's at Mercy General in Kalispell," Cole answered, stepping forward. "Stable but weak. I'm riding there this morning to check on him. The rest of you start the search. Wrench will coordinate from here. Any hits, you call it in immediately." Ironside climbed down from the truck, and the riders dispersed into their assigned teams. Engines roared to life, and within minutes convoys of motorcycles were rolling out in every direction, north toward the Canadian border, east toward Billings, south toward Bozeman, west toward Idaho. Cole mounted his bike and rode alone toward Kalispell. Mercy General Hospital sat on the outskirts of town, a squat brick building surrounded by evergreen trees. Cole parked his bike near the main entrance and walked inside, his boots echoing on the linoleum floor. The smell of disinfectant and stale coffee filled the hallways. He found Walter in room 214, hooked up to an IV and a heart monitor that beeped steadily in the quiet room. The old man looked smaller than he had the night before, his skin grey and papery, his breathing shallow. But his eyes were open. Walter turned his head when Cole entered, and something like relief flickered across his face. "You came back," Walter rasped. Cole pulled a chair up to the bedside and sat down. "Told you I would. Did you find her?" "We're looking. 500 riders are out there right now, searching every corner of Montana. If she's here, we'll find her." Walter's hand trembled as he reached for Cole's arm. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve all of you." "This isn't about deserve," Cole said quietly. "It's about a promise. You made one to Emma. We're helping you keep it." Walter's eyes filled with tears. "I left her. I was a coward. Her mother and we fought all the time. I drank too much. I couldn't hold a job. One day I just walked out, told myself it was better for her, that she'd be happier without me." "Was she?" Cole asked. Walter shook his head, his voice breaking. "I don't know. I never looked back. I was too ashamed. I spent 40 years running from that shame, and now I'm out of time." Cole leaned forward. "Then we make the time count. You're going to see her again, Walter. You're going to say what you need to say, and whatever happens after that, it's up to her." Walter closed his eyes, a single tear sliding down his weathered cheek. "Thank you." Cole stayed for another 20 minutes, then left the hospital and mounted his bike. As he rode back toward Whitefish, his phone buzzed with incoming messages. Team 3 checking Billings courthouse records. Found a marriage certificate. Emma Hayes married a man named Robert Vance in 1998. Name changed to Emma Vance. Team 7 in Missoula. Spoke to a woman who knew Emma's mother. Said Emma moved to Bozeman in the early 2000s, working on an address. Team 12 found a LinkedIn profile. Emma Vance, age 50, works as a school counselor in Livingston, Montana. Cole's heart kicked up a gear. He pulled over and called Wrench. "Tell me you've got something solid," Cole said. "Livingston," Wrench confirmed. "Emma Vance, née Hayes, works at Livingston High School, lives at 427 Maple Street. I cross-referenced photos from her school profile with age progression software based on the childhood photo. It's a 92% match." Cole exhaled slowly. "We found her. Sending coordinates to your phone now," Wrench said. "What's the play?" Cole thought for a moment. "I go alone. This isn't a show. She doesn't need 500 bikers on her doorstep. I deliver the message. She decides what happens next." "Copy that. Ride safe, brother." Cole hung up and stared at the coordinates on his phone. Livingston was 2 hours southeast. The sun was climbing higher now, burning off the morning chill. He started his bike and pointed it toward the one woman who held Walter Hayes' last chance at redemption. If this story is hitting you hard, hit that like button. It helps us keep bringing you these real-life journeys. Livingston, Montana, was a small town nestled in the Paradise Valley, with the Absaroka Mountains rising in the distance and the Yellowstone River cutting through the landscape. The streets were quiet in the late morning, lined with modest homes and pickup trucks parked in driveways. Cole found 427 Maple Street without trouble, a single-story ranch house with pale blue siding and a small front porch. A wooden swing hung from chains, swaying slightly in the breeze. A flower bed ran along the front of the house, the last of the summer blooms wilting in the October cold. He parked his bike at the curb and sat for a moment, staring at the front door. This was the part that couldn't be forced, the part where all the searching, all the miles, all the brotherhood in the world didn't matter. Because the next few minutes belonged to Emma Hayes, now Emma Vance, and whatever decision she made would be final. Cole dismounted and walked up the porch steps. He knocked twice. Footsteps approached from inside. The door opened. The woman who stood in the doorway was 50 years old, with shoulder-length brown hair streaked with grey and clear green eyes that studied Cole with cautious curiosity. She wore jeans and a cardigan, and there was a wedding ring on her left hand. Cole saw the 7-year-old girl in the photograph reflected in her face, the same bone structure, the same nose, the same slight tilt of the head. But the joy was gone. In its place was the weariness of someone who had learned not to trust easy answers. "Can I help you?" Emma asked. Cole took off his sunglasses and met her gaze. "Miss Vance, my name is Cole Brennan. I'm with the Iron Vow Brotherhood. I need to talk to you about your father." Emma's expression hardened instantly. "I don't have a father." "Yes, you do," Cole said gently, "and he's dying." Emma's hand tightened on the doorframe. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she stepped back and started to close the door. "Wait," Cole said, holding up a hand. "Just hear me out, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Emma stopped, the door half closed. Her jaw was tight, her eyes glistening. "Why? Why should I care? He left me when I was 7 years old. He chose to walk away. I haven't seen him or heard from him in 43 years. "I know," Cole said, "and I'm not here to make excuses for him. What he did was wrong, but he's out of time, Emma. He's got days, maybe a week, and he asked me to find you because he needs to say something before he dies." "He had 43 years to say something," Emma shot back, her voice cracking. "He had my entire childhood, my teenage years, my wedding, the birth of my kids. He missed all of it. And now, because he's dying, I'm supposed to care." Cole didn't flinch. "No, you're not supposed to do anything. I'm just here to give you the choice. He collapsed outside a bar last night begging for help. Not for himself, for you. He wanted someone to find you, to tell you he's sorry, to give you a chance to hear him out before he's gone." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She looked away, one hand coming up to cover her mouth. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I spent so many years hating him, wondering why I wasn't good enough for him to stay, why he chose a bottle over me. I don't know why he left," Cole said quietly, "but I know he's been carrying that weight every day since. And I know he's terrified of dying before he can tell you that you were always good enough, that leaving you was the biggest mistake of his life." Emma turned back to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Does he even remember me? Does he know who I became?" Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph, the one Walter had been clutching when he collapsed. He handed it to Emma. She took it with trembling hands, staring down at the image of herself as a 7-year-old girl. Her breath hitched and a sob escaped her throat. "He's been carrying this for 43 years, Cole said. "Never let it go. That's how much you mattered to him." Emma pressed the photograph to her chest, her shoulders shaking with silent tears. She stood there for a long time, crying on her front porch, while Cole waited, giving her the space to feel everything she'd buried for 4 decades. Finally, she looked up at him, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes clear. "Where is he?" she asked. "Mercy General Hospital in Kalispell," Cole said. "Room 214. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need to call my husband." "Tell him where I'm going." "Take your time," Cole said. "I'll wait." Emma nodded and disappeared inside. Cole sat down on the porch swing, the chains creaking softly as he rocked back and forth. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to the Brotherhood group chat. "Found her. She's coming. Stand down. Mission accomplished." The replies came in fast. "Hell yes. Ride safe. That's what we do." 10 minutes later, Emma emerged from the house, wearing a jacket and carrying her purse. Her eyes were red, but her expression was resolute. "I'll follow you," she said. Cole stood and nodded. "Let's go bring him home." The ride back to Kalispell took 2 hours. Cole led the way on his bike, glancing in his mirrors every few minutes to make sure Emma's silver SUV was still behind him. The road stretched long and empty through the Montana wilderness, the mountains rising on either side like ancient sentinels. Cole's mind churned as he rode. He thought about all the missions he'd been part of over the years, rescuing stranded veterans, helping families find closure, standing up to corrupt officials who thought the law didn't apply to them. But this one felt different. This wasn't about justice or revenge. This was about healing, about giving two broken people a chance to face each other before it was too late. He didn't know what would happen when Emma walked into that hospital room. He didn't know if Walter would find the words he needed to say, or if Emma would be able to forgive him. But he knew that showing up, that act of courage, of stepping into the fire, was the first step toward redemption. They arrived at Mercy General just after 2 p.m. Cole parked his bike near the entrance, and Emma pulled in beside him. She sat in her car for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the hospital doors. Cole walked over and tapped on the window. Emma rolled it down. "You ready?" Cole asked. Emma exhaled slowly. "I don't know. I've imagined this moment 1,000 times, yelling at him, telling him how much he hurt me. But now that I'm here, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." "You don't have to feel anything," Cole said. "Just go in there and say what you need to say. The rest will figure itself out." Emma nodded and got out of the car. Together, they walked into the hospital and took the elevator to the 2nd floor. The hallway was quiet. The only sound the soft beeping of machines and the shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum. They stopped outside room 214. Emma's hand hovered over the door handle. She looked at Cole, her eyes wide with fear, and something else. Hope, maybe, or the ghost of it. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Cole asked. Emma shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do alone." Cole stepped back. "I'll be right here." Emma took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. Walter Hayes was asleep when she entered. The room was dim, the blinds drawn, the heart monitor beeping steadily beside the bed. He looked so small lying there, his weathered face pale and sunken, his hands resting on top of the blanket. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was him, the man who had abandoned her, the man whose absence had shaped her entire life, and he looked old, fragile, human. She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing beside the bed. Walter stirred, his eyes fluttering open. For a moment, he stared at her, confused as if he wasn't sure whether he was dreaming. Then recognition dawned. His breath caught. His eyes went wide. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he could even speak. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper, cracked and desperate. Emma's throat closed up. She couldn't speak. She could only nod. Walter's hand reached out, trembling, hovering in the air between them. "You came. You actually came." Emma stared at his hand, at the age spots and scars, at the fingers that had once held hers when she was little, before everything fell apart. She took his hand. Walter let out a sob, raw, guttural, the sound of a man who had been holding his breath for 43 years. His grip tightened, and he pulled her hand to his chest, pressing it against his heart. "I'm sorry," Walter choked out. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I left you. I was weak and selfish and broken, and I left you. And there's no excuse. Nothing I can say will ever make it right." Emma's tears fell freely now, her voice shaking. "You left me, Dad. You left me, and I spent my whole life thinking it was my fault, that I wasn't good enough." "No," Walter said fiercely, his voice stronger now. "No, baby girl. It was never you. It was me. I was drowning, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I thought you'd be better off without me. I thought I was protecting you." "You weren't," Emma said, her voice breaking. "You were just gone, and I needed you." Walter's face crumpled. I know, and I can't give you those years back. I can't fix what I broke. But I needed you to know. I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped carrying you with me." He reached under his pillow with his free hand and pulled out the photograph, the one Cole had given him. He held it up, his hand shaking. "This is all I had," Walter said. "This picture. I looked at it every single day, and I told myself that one day I'd find the courage to come back, to tell you I was sorry, to tell you that you were the best thing I ever did in my life, and walking away from you was the worst." Emma took the photograph. her tears falling onto the faded image. She looked at herself as a 7-year-old girl, frozen in a moment of pure joy, and she felt something inside her crack open, a wound she'd spent decades trying to seal. "I hated you," Emma whispered. "For so long, I hated you." "I know," Walter said, "and you had every right to. But I also missed you," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "I missed having a dad. I missed the man you could have been." Walter's tears fell harder. "I wish I could have been that man for you. I wish I'd been strong enough." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she saw past the anger and the hurt. She saw a man who had made terrible mistakes, a man who had spent a lifetime running from his own shame, a man who was now facing the end, desperate for one last chance to make things right. And she made a choice. "I forgive you," Emma said. Walter's eyes widened. "Emma." "I forgive you, Dad," Emma said again, her voice steady now. "Not because you deserve it, but because I need to. I need to let go of the anger. I need to stop carrying you as a ghost." Walter broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. Emma leaned forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him as he cried. This broken, dying man who had once been her father and was now in this moment just a human being trying to find peace before the end. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, crying together, and letting 43 years of pain slowly begin to dissolve. Outside in the hallway, Cole Brennan stood with his back against the wall, arms crossed, eyes closed. He could hear the muffled sounds of crying through the door, and he let out a slow breath. This was why they rode. This was why they answered the call. Because sometimes redemption looked like an old man collapsing outside a bar, and sometimes it looked like a daughter choosing to forgive. Cole pulled out his phone and sent one final message to the Brotherhood. "Mission complete. Walter and Emma are together. Promise kept." The replies flooded in. "Damn right. That's a win, brother. Ride home safe." Cole pocketed his phone and waited, because some moments were too sacred to interrupt. Emma stayed with her father for 3 days. She called her husband Robert and explained everything. The biker who had shown up at their door, the father she hadn't seen in 43 years, the hospital room where decades of pain were finally being laid to rest. Robert didn't hesitate. He drove up from Livingston with their 2 teenage daughters, and together the family sat with Walter in his final days. Walter met his granddaughters for the first time. He held their hands and told them stories about Emma as a little girl, stories Emma herself had forgotten. He showed them the photograph he'd carried all those years, and he told them that the greatest regret of his life was not being there to watch Emma grow up. The girls cried. Emma cried. Robert stood quietly in the corner, his hand on Emma's shoulder, offering silent support. Cole visited every day, bringing coffee and sitting with Walter when Emma needed a break. They talked about the war, about motorcycles, about the weight of promises and the cost of running from them. Walter told Cole that he'd spent his whole life believing he didn't deserve forgiveness, and that Emma's words had given him something he never thought he'd have again: peace. On the 3rd night, Walter's condition worsened. The doctors said it was only a matter of hours. Emma sat beside his bed, holding his hand, refusing to leave. At 4:17 a.m., Walter Hayes took his last breath. Emma was there. Robert was there. The granddaughters were there. And Walter died knowing that he had kept his promise. The funeral was held 5 days later in Livingston. It was a small service. Emma's family, a few neighbors, and a handful of people from the town who had known Walter briefly over the years. But when the service ended and the mourners walked outside, they stopped in their tracks. Lining both sides of the street were 500 motorcycles. The Iron Vow Brotherhood had come to pay their respects. The riders stood beside their bikes, silent and still, dressed in black leather with their patches visible. They didn't speak. They didn't intrude. They simply stood as witnesses, a testament to the fact that Walter Hayes' life, broken as it was, had ended with honor. Emma walked down the steps of the church and stopped when she saw the sea of bikes. Her hand flew to her mouth and tears streamed down her face. Cole stepped forward, removing his sunglasses. "We wanted to be here," Cole said quietly, "to show you that your father's story mattered, that his promise mattered, and that you matter." Emma couldn't speak. She just nodded, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Emma. "Your father wrote this the night before he died," Cole said. "He asked me to give it to you." Emma unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but the words were clear. "Emma, I don't have much time left, so I'll keep this short. I'm sorry for the years I stole from you. I'm sorry for the man I wasn't, but I'm not sorry for the woman you became. You're strong, kind, and brave, everything I should have been. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for giving me a chance to be your father, even if only for a few days. Those days were the best of my life. I love you, baby girl. I always did." Dad Emma pressed the letter to her chest and wept. Robert put his arm around her, and their daughters flanked her on either side. Together they stood on the steps of the church, surrounded by the rumble of 500 motorcycles and the brotherhood that had made Walter's final wish come true. After the service, the riders started their engines one by one, the sound rolling through the streets like thunder. They rode past the church in a slow procession, each one tipping their helmet toward Emma as they passed. Cole was the last to leave. He stopped his bike in front of Emma and looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Cole nodded. "That's what we do." He kicked his bike into gear and rode off, the roar of his engine fading into the distance. Emma stood there long after the last bike had disappeared, the letter still clutched in her hands, the weight of 43 years finally beginning to lift. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it. Stories like this remind us why honor and redemption still matter. 3 months after Walter's death, Emma received a package in the mail. It was a small wooden box, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Inside was a leather bracelet with a single steel charm, a chain formed into a circle, the emblem of the Iron Vow Brotherhood. There was also a note, written in Cole's handwriting. "Emma, your father made a promise 43 years ago, and we helped him keep it. But the real promise was the one you made when you chose to forgive him. That took courage. That took strength, and that's what the Brotherhood is built on. People who keep their promises, even when it's hard. Wear this if you want. Or don't. Either way, you're part of the family now. If you ever need anything, you know where to find us." Emma put the bracelet on her wrist and never took it off. She returned to her job at Livingston High School, where she worked as a counselor, helping troubled teenagers navigate their own pain. She told them about her father, about the man who left, the man who came back, and the importance of forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. She started a support group for children of absent parents, offering a space where they could talk about their grief, their anger, and their hope. The group grew quickly, and within a year, it expanded to 3 neighboring towns. Emma also stayed in touch with Cole. They texted occasionally, and once a year, on the anniversary of Walter's death, Cole rode down to Livingston and had coffee with her. They never talked about anything heavy, just life, motorcycles, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd done something good. Walter Hayes's grave was in a small cemetery outside Livingston, marked by a simple headstone. Emma visited once a month, bringing fresh flowers and sitting on the grass, talking to him about her daughters, her work, and the life she'd built. And every time she visited, she noticed something. Someone else had been there. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt. A small rock placed on top of the headstone. A single wildflower tucked into the grass. Emma never saw who it was, but she knew. The Brotherhood was keeping watch. One evening, Emma was sitting on her porch with Robert, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and orange. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Vance, my name is Marcus. I'm with the Iron Vow Brotherhood. There's a man in Billings who needs help finding his son. He's dying, and he's afraid it's too late. I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk to him, to tell him your story, to give him hope." Emma stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "Yes, I'll help." She hit send and leaned back in her chair, the leather bracelet warm against her wrist. Because some promises were worth keeping, and some legacies were worth carrying forward. The sun dipped below the mountains, and the first stars began to appear in the Montana sky. Somewhere out on the open road, a convoy of motorcycles rolled through the night, 500 riders bound by a single, unbreakable vow. A promise made is a debt owed, and the Iron Vow Brotherhood always paid their debts. Thank you for riding with us through Walter and Emma's journey. If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because there are more stories of honor, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood waiting for you. Until next time, ride safe and keep your promises.